Good afternoon. My name is Kara Miller. I'm coming to you live from Cornell University. My role is the Interim Senior Associate Director in the Office of Fraternity, Sororities, and Independent Living. I'm a proud sorority alumna myself, and it is January 10th, 2017. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar about recruitment and intake at Cornell University. It's an exciting time, and we're pleased that you want to hear more information. I'm going to speak to you for a few moments, and then we'll be joined by current undergraduate fraternity and sorority student leaders to tell you more about them, about the process, and to answer questions. At any time, if you'd like to submit a question, please do so. We'd love to answer all of your questions today during the webinar. I'm currently beginning my 10th year at Cornell University, and one thing you might know about fraternity and sorority life at Cornell is that it's very old. It began here in 1868. It was one of the first forms of housing for Cornell students. And in 2018, we will celebrate our 150th birthday of fraternity and sorority life at Cornell University. We currently have over 60 chapters. That means over 60 fraternities and sororities. Each individual fraternity or sorority at a campus or university is called a chapter. Over 40 of our fraternities and sororities at Cornell have a house, so there is a bit of a living experience for those with houses. Those groups that do not have houses might also live together on campus or off campus. All of our groups but two are what we call national. That means if you go to other colleges and universities, you might see the very same fraternity and sorority exists there. Cornell has a very historical fraternity and sorority life. We have a few organizations that are what are called alpha chapters. An alpha chapter, as you might imagine, with the beginning of the alphabet, means that it was the first chapter founded anywhere across the country. We're really proud of that history, and you'll hear more about that today during our webinar. We have 3 councils here at Cornell in fraternity and sorority life. So if you hear the term tri-council, that's what we mean. We have the Multicultural Greek Letter Council, which is often called MGLC, the Panhellenic Council, which is sometimes abbreviated PHC, and the Interfraternity Council, often called IFC. A third of the students at Cornell University join a fraternity or sorority. We're very proud of that number. We do have recruitment in both the fall and the spring, but students are not allowed to join their first semester on campus. So for many of you, if you're a student, this is your first opportunity to join a fraternity or sorority if it's your first year here at Cornell. We do have a list of the fees to join fraternities and sororities at Cornell on our website. And if you haven't already, I encourage you strongly to visit our website. Our office website is greeks.cornell.edu. There's a special tab there for how to join, and that can connect you to individual council websites. I know if you're a student and you're going to participate in this process, you might have a lot of different feelings right now. My advice to you is to be yourself. The process can be overwhelming, exciting, tiring, fun. It can be hard to make decisions, but we're really glad you're interested in the process. If you haven't already, we encourage you to register for recruitment. That's a really great way for us to be able to communicate to you throughout the process. I encourage you as you participate in the process to ask questions. Ask them of our office, ask them of the fraternity and sorority members you meet, ask them of our Greek student leaders who join us today. If you think of something later, you can always follow up with us via email. I want to let you know that you can go through the fraternity or sorority recruitment process with no commitment to join. It's fine to come through and try it out and see if it might be for you. Personally, as a sorority alumna, I think you're going to really like the experience, but there's not a commitment. You can just participate and see what it's all about. Once you accept a bid for membership and become initiated, then there's more of a commitment. I encourage you to keep an open mind. If you've been here for a while, you might already think you know which fraternity or sorority you want to join, and there might be others that you would have just as great an experience in. So keep an open mind and visit a few organizations. Being a member of a fraternity or sorority is really a lifelong opportunity. I'm still involved today, and I wish that for all of you. That's enough of me talking to you. I'm going to introduce the students, and they will let you know who they are and tell you a little bit about the council that they lead and how recruitment works for that specific council. First, we'll have Natasha tell you about the Panhellenic Council.
Hi everybody. My name's Natasha. I am a senior mechanical engineer, and I am the outgoing president of Panhellenic. So kind of what Panhellenic is, we have 13 chapters on campus. That means that there are 13 organizations essentially that you can join. Each chapter has about 120, 140 members, somewhere in between there, depending on the semester and the size of the chapter. But that is the typical size that we have. All of the chapters will have physical houses during the 2017-2018 academic year, which is really exciting. So no matter which chapter you join, there will be an opportunity for you to live in a house. That opportunity depends on the house. Some have live-in restrictions, some have live-in requirements. Going through the process, though, each house will tell you about their separate requirements that they have. All will have some sort of meal plan as well. Typically, this consists of, some sort of full meal plan if you live in the house, or some sort of partial meal plan if you don't. So that might be dinner after or before chapter or something like that. So the first part of going through recruitment for Panhellenic is going to the first meeting that we have, which is actually the night before recruitment starts. It's a very casual meeting. All of the potential new members, or PNMs as we like to call them, attend, and the outgoing Panhellenic Council just kind of tells them what to expect throughout the week, what kind of attire they might want to have picked out, what their rights are as Panhellenic and as members going through Panhellenic recruitment, and what to expect from each of the chapters in each of the rounds. They'll also meet their Rho Gammas. So Rho Gammas are older sisters of the chapters that have been disaffiliated. So they basically have spent the entire semester getting ready to show around the potential new members. Each potential new member will be in a Rho Gamma group, and the Rho Gamma is essentially there to just help guide them, answer any questions that they have. I know I called my Rho Gamma several times during the process just to get her advice on stuff, and she was awesome and gave me great advice, so they're really a great resource to have. After that, we have the first round. Every potential new member attends all 13 chapters the first round, 7 chapters one day and 6 chapters the other day. So the nice part about this is that, every potential new member is required to see all chapters, and they get to really have an experience at each one and kind of open their mind to where they think that they might be, or the kind of people that they think they might be around, and kind of see what the vibe is for each chapter. It's a general meet and greet. All the potential new members will have t-shirts for this round, so they don't have to worry about picking out clothing or stressing about that. Honestly, that's mostly for the potential new members so that they know that the sisters at the house really aren't judging them based on anything aesthetic and really just want to have a conversation and, see where it goes. The second round is house tours. So each of the 13 chapters will give a house tour. This is going to be a little bit different because 2 chapters are switching houses for next year, so they'll have more of a virtual kind of house tour. During the house tours, you'll learn about finances, you'll learn about sisterhood. There's a lot of things that you can see within the house. You can see a lot of different apparel, which I kind of thought was pretty cool. And then also I think all of the chapters will have some sort of virtual tour. So if there's any sort of accessibility issue, you can still see the house, and it's totally fine. The third round is a sisterhood activity. So that's new this year, actually. It's going to depend on the chapter. You're going to have a wide variety of things, but they basically just show you what the sisterhood means to them, and how much their sisters have supported each other throughout their experience at Cornell, which is really awesome to see. They'll also give a presentation on the philanthropy of the chapter, so you'll be able to see which philanthropy each chapter supports. And then the last round is the preference round. It is the most formal. Each chapter has a ritual that they do, so depending on which chapters you go to, you will see their rituals. You'll really get a more heartfelt moment with the chapters. It's a longer round, so you get more of a time to have a deep conversation. The number of chapters that you attend decreases every round. So you start with 13, and then you have a maximum of 3 by final round, so that you can kind of slowly decide where you think that you end up. It's a mutual selection process, so you choose and the chapters choose, and then it matches based on that. So the new member period comes right after that, and it's really fun for Panhellenic. We have a really good time getting to know our new member classes, and it's a really great time. We have big little weeks, and there's a lot to look forward to, basically. So Eddie
Cruz, and I'm here at the School of Innovation, and I'm also the for the Multicultural Greek Letter Council, also known as MGLC. So MGLC, currently for this spring semester, we have 14 active chapters, and we are subdivided within sub-councils consisting of Asian interest, historically Black, and Latin base. Our Asian interest organizations do partake in Rush Week, similar to Panhellenic. So Rush Week this year starts on January 29th, and it starts with a general interest meeting where you get to know the brothers and sisters of the 4 Asian interest organizations. After that, they have a few formal events, private to each organization, and then they have social events in which you can mingle with the brothers and sisters just to get the sense of which organization you want to join. And this year, bid day is on February 9th, and after bid day, you would partake in the 4-week new member education process. As for historically Black and Latin-based organizations, we do not partake in Rush Week, but we do have information sessions in which you get to know the chapters and the history of the chapter at Cornell. From there, you can attend various information sessions and decide which one is the best fit for you. Keep in mind that although we might be categorized as Asian interest, historically Black or Latin-based, we are not exclusive to those ethnicities. And once you decided on which organizations you want to join, you get further information on how can you become a brother or sister of that organization. Blake?
Thanks, Eddie. Hi, everyone. My name is Blake Brown. I'm a student studying government, senior, originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and I serve as the president of the Interfraternity Council. So the Interfraternity Council, popularly known as the IFC, is made up of 36 diverse values-based chapters, several of which have existed since the university's founded. I think what sets apart our fraternity community from others around the world is that we're truly progressive, and we aim to celebrate and welcome students from all backgrounds and experiences and identities. To begin, I'd like to touch on some of the benefits of joining fraternity at Cornell. So for me, first and foremost, it's been the lifelong friendships. I've gained some of my best friends, not only from my specific chapter, but from other Panhellenic and MGLC and IFC fraternities and sororities. Academic support, it's really great to be in classes with your fraternity brothers, being able to study in your library, in your house, and just gain a lot of academic resources, as well as professional development and networking. And then community service. For me, it was really important to get engaged and involved in the Ithaca community during my 4 years at campus. And being a member of fraternity has opened up a ton of outlets to get my hands dirty and to serve in the Ithaca area. So to begin on recruitment, so recruitment is a week-long process, and it's super casual within the IFC, and it's a mutual selection process. It begins with Meet the Greeks, which will be on January 18th. A super exciting time to meet representatives throughout all 36 chapters. And then after that, after a short presentation, we dive right into open houses, contacts, and then the final day concludes with bid day. So during open houses, you'll have the opportunity to go to 34 of our chapter houses. meet the brothers, ask questions, try some nice food, and you can really dress however you would like and be yourself. My most important advice is to ask questions. So when you go in, it's fun to just hang out and get to know the brothers, but it's almost more important to ask serious questions. So if you're concerned about finances, ask about the costs of joining that fraternity. If you're curious about living in the chapter house, ask about what that's like. And then it's fun to ask about traditions, other chapters around the nation, things like that. So to dive more into recruitment specifics, so open houses are just like it says, you just go to the chapter house. And then 3 nights of the week, there's contacts. That's when you're going to stay in your residence hall, and fraternity members will come to your dorm, and they'll speak to you about whether or not you should join their fraternity, what you think about their fraternity, and that's really the essence of the mutual selection process. So another piece of advice I'd have for you is to, like Kara said at the beginning, even if you have some preconceptions about joining a particular fraternity, I would definitely use Recruitment Week as an opportunity to meet literally thousands of students from all around the world. So keep an open perspective and visit as many chapters as you can. But as the week progresses, definitely narrow down your list based on their values, their traditions, the different benefits they offer, and you'll definitely be able to find the chapter that most suits your needs and interests and wants here at Cornell.
Thank you. You all did a wonderful job. And for those of you who are curious, these students were each the leader of their council throughout 2016. They were either elected or appointed through an interview process by their peers. They do a tremendous amount of work, and it's a volunteer leadership position, while they also retain membership in their own fraternity or sorority and actively contribute, as well as many other things that they do on campus in addition to academics. So we're very fortunate to have them. They all stay on through the beginning of January through the recruitment and intake process before we begin the transition process. So it's really exciting that we get to have them with us today. If you have questions, please submit them. We're going to answer a few that have already been submitted. One of the first questions that we receive a lot for IFC and Panhellenic recruitment, because they both have interest sessions or meet the Greeks that happen on Wednesday, January 18th, we often get asked the question, when can my son or daughter come back to campus? And that depends a little bit on where your son or daughter lives. If they live off campus, they can come back, as long as the lease allows, they can come back. If they live on campus in housing, the day that the residence halls open is Wednesday, January 18th. They open at 9:00 a.m. So they'll have plenty of time to go to the sessions at night. If they're traveling from far away and travel doesn't work out and they happen to miss that session, that's okay. They can contact our student leaders. If they're approaching a Panhellenic group, they can contact their Rho Gamma. That happens sometimes, so we don't want you to worry or stress about that scenario. Another question, and for this one, I will ask the students to help me a little bit because what they wear and what I wear might be a little different. But the question is, what should my son or daughter wear for recruitment? I'm going to let Natasha answer first, but before we do, I want to let you know on our website there is a guidebook that hopefully you review, and it actually has pictures that demonstrate some things that you can wear for recruitment.
Thanks, Kara. Okay, so one thing that we want to make sure that all PNM can know is that they really don't have a huge strict dress code. So they are required to wear the t-shirts that they're provided for the first round, which is the first 2 days. And then after that, it's supposed to get a little bit more formal every day. Your conversations with chapters should really reflect that. They should be about deeper things, less about your major, where you're from, and more about actual things that you want to talk about. But other than that, there isn't any requirements that we have. We recommend that you ask your friends what kind of stuff they're going to wear and try to match that, because that tends to make people the most comfortable. Typically, like I said, the last round is formal. So typically that's some sort of formal attire, whether that's a dress, some sort of suit, anything like that. Nothing terribly formal. Please don't feel the need to go out and buy anything for recruitment. That's definitely not necessary. Your outfit should really just be what you're most comfortable in and reflect who you are. Blake?
I see there's also no dress code. Under this nice dress shirt, I am wearing sweatpants, and you can, in fact, wear sweatpants to open houses. I like to say you can just dress however you dress to your classes. You are making a first impression, so it's important to look nice or however you would like to look. But I would say for the most part, just be yourself. And if fraternities want you to dress up for whatever reason, they'll communicate that with you.
One thing I will mention, because we are in beautiful Ithaca, New York in January, is that sometimes it is cold at that time of year. So please do remember to wear a jacket. A lot of the women for Panhellenic recruitment might wear Uggs because you're going to be walking from sorority house to sorority house. Sometimes people have sweatpants. If they're wearing a skirt or a dress, they have sweatpants that they put on in between because it can be cold. We're hearing it might be in the 40s next week, which is kind of a heat wave for Ithaca, but just make sure that you dress smart for the weather because you don't want to be out there all day without a coat. Another question that we often receive, what will my son or daughter pay in dues and fees, and can they be bursar billed? So there are fees to join a fraternity or sorority. They're often called dues. There can be additional fees in terms of housing, if you live in the fraternity or sorority house, if they have one, and or if you're on their meal plan, if they have one. One thing that is a particular nuance for IFC fraternities that I want to make sure you hear me say is that often when a new member joins an IFC fraternity, the fraternity will ask that new member to join their meal plan right away, so in the spring semester. The challenge with that is that oftentimes the student already has a Cornell dining meal plan and isn't going to eat all those meals between the two. Cornell dining does work with us. It's a very short deadline, but they allow those who have signed a bid with a fraternity to drop down their Cornell dining plan so it's less cost prohibitive. We send that information when students sign a bid, but that's something that I want you to hear me say and to know right now, because we want you to take the opportunity to change your Cornell meal plan if that's something you choose to do. Additionally, it asked if the fees can be bursar billed. They very often are. Every individual fraternity or sorority operates and governs themselves, but the majority of them do use the bursar bill. So fees would show up there for housing just like they do if you live on campus, or for dues, they would show up there as well. Another thing to be conscious of is that oftentimes, because these are national organizations, the first semester that your son or daughter joins, there might be higher fees because they're paying for a new pin or a badge that they receive when they become an initiated member. And they'll continue to pay dues every semester. Sometimes even if they don't live in the house, if there is a house, they might pay something called a parlor fee, which helps with general maintenance and upkeep of the house. All of the current fees for our organization .cornell.edu. They're also listed in that Panhellenic guidebook that I mentioned before. Those are both resources. They should tell you about costs during recruitment or early in the new member process, but feel free to ask if you don't know. Do any of the students have anything they'd like to add about meal plans or payment or dress code that I didn't mention? Eddie.
Yeah, I just want to you may have national dues and regional dues, so just ask the organization that you may potentially be interested about that. And also there are MGLC dues, which is $25 per student per semester.
This one is going to specifically go to Blake, so I'm going to read the question, and Blake, I'm giving you some advance notice, but I know that you know the answer. Should you return to IFC chapters for the second day of open houses or visit chapters you didn't see the previous day?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So obviously you're not going to be able to go to all 36 chapters in one day of open houses. First of all, they're located all across on campus and off campus. But second of all, and most importantly, you want to spend a decent amount of time at each chapter house to get to know the brothers and form authentic relationships and have meaningful conversations. So if you didn't go to a chapter house the first, second, third day of open houses, you're more than welcome and encouraged to still go to new chapter houses throughout the week.
Thank you. These next questions are a little bit specific to the contact process. So let me briefly describe it, and then I'll ask the question, and this will be another one for Blake. But the contact process happens during IFC recruitment. If you look at their schedule, the hours and days of contacts are very specifically listed. What happens is the students who live in residence halls should stay in their residence hall during that time block. And much like you have gone to visit the fraternities to express your interest, that's an opportunity for them in smaller groups of up to 4 people to come and to talk to you in your residence hall. If you happen to not live in a residence hall, they still might come and contact you where they live. It's just a little bit different. There's an official sign-in policy in the residence halls that we partner with them to work through. But the specific question, there are 2 about contacts. Let me ask one first. At each contact night, how many houses should a student expect to keep on his list for each round?
Okay, that's a good question. So it definitely depends on where you are in the week. So there's 3 rounds of contacts. The first is towards the beginning of the week, and the last is towards the end of the week, and the middle is in the middle of the week. So during the first, it should be a kind of a wide array of chapters, maybe not chapters that you're totally intent on joining, but just have general interest in. And as the week progresses, that should be narrowing down and down. So therefore, you should be getting less and less chapters visiting your residence hall during contacts. So if you have 5 on the first night of contacts, and only 2 or 1 on the last night of contacts, that's totally natural and would actually make a lot of sense for recruitment. I know when I began recruitment freshman year, I was kind of nervous about contacts, just the general idea of having to sit in your residence hall in your room for 2 hours and wait for fraternity members that you may or may not know visit your dorm. And at first it did feel very kind of awkward, but it really is just, it should be a very natural, comfortable, genuine conversation. It will be very quick, and it's up to you to use these contact period to genuinely tell the fraternity members whether or not you're interested in meeting more brothers and ultimately joining their chapter by the end of the week.
Thank you, Blake. And as he was describing, typically that last Tuesday of contacts, that is when a chapter would come and offer you a bid. So it usually decreases. One thing in IFC recruitment is that you could be offered a bid to more than one fraternity, and then you have the decision to make. Whereas with Panhellenic, you make that decision when you fill out a preference card. You rank the sororities in the order of your choice from the invitations that you have. So you won't get offered 2 bids, you kind of make the choice ahead of time. That's one nuance difference. And this says, for contact sessions, does the student stay in their residence hall room waiting for someone to knock on their door so they don't miss the contact?
Yes, so during open house, sign in at the front door, you'll give your address. So I was in 601 Mary Domlin Hall. So they came to my room, and I stayed in there for the entire duration of the 2 hours. So they'll come to you. If you live in a college town residence or on West Campus, they'll already have your cell phone number from the sign-in from the open houses. So they'll just shoot you a text, and they'll set up special accommodations for you.
Thank you, Blake. And it's important to remember to stay there for the duration. There could be a fraternity that asks you to leave and go somewhere with them during the contact process, but to keep your options open, we ask that you stay there, because if you leave and go somewhere with one fraternity and another one comes, you aren't there to receive that contact. So that would be my advice, to stay there the entire time. The next question that we have is, what is the general acceptance rate? This varies a little bit from council to council. Because the Panhellenic process is so formalized, everyone signs up to go through recruitment, everyone visits all 13 chapters, and then every day you get a schedule of where you're going back based on your interests and the sorority's interest. So during Panhellenic recruitment, our placement rate is about 80%, meaning about 80% of women end up signing a bid who started the process. A few things happen during that week. Some women opt out on their own. They might decide that the recruitment process isn't for them. They might have gone through just to see what it was like and changed their mind. Some, like we were talking about, really have their mind set on one or two sororities, and if they don't get invited back to that sorority, they might withdraw. They are considered in our percentage rate. Others might continue getting invited back and sign a bid on the last night. But it is important for you to know that there is not a guaranteed bid for anyone who goes through recruitment for any of the three councils. And that can be hard because it can make you feel a little bit anxious about the process. But that's one of the reasons why we are encouraging you to visit a large amount of chapters and to keep your options open, because we would like there to be a place for you. Sometimes it just might be considering a chapter that you originally didn't think that you wanted to join. There are also some limited opportunities depending on the council and depending on how your particular schedule worked for second round recruitment, is what IFC calls it, for fall recruitment, and then in Panhellenic for continuous open bidding. So there might be additional opportunities, but bids are not guaranteed for any student in any of our three councils. Do any of the students have anything they'd like to say about that? Natasha.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the vast majority of the Panhellenic, that 20% that don't end up with bids, that does end up being students who self-select out of the process and decide that the chapters that they have left are not for them. Well, that's totally understandable, and you'll always have that option. We always just want to encourage you to consider all of your options and keep an open mind. People tend to not believe me when I tell them what chapter I'm in, so just know that you can find a place for you pretty much in any of these chapters. They're very large, so you're going to find friends pretty much everywhere.
Thank you, Natasha. This next question, I'll have the students help me answer, but the question is, are chapters open to LGBTQAA students? We pride ourselves on diversity and inclusion here at Cornell, and I'll let the students talk a little bit about their experience with their individual councils.
Who first?
Natasha first.
Yeah, it's basically, yes, of course, we absolutely do. You should never find any sort of discrimination, no matter which house you attend to, what round it is, anything like that. If that is something that concerns you, you are free to bring it up, but there is no pressure to. Again, there's really no expectations for you, and we're accepting to everybody, so keep that in mind. Blake?
Yeah, I'd like to echo Natasha's sentiments. The IFC and all 36 chapters are fully accepting of LGBTQ students. I have a lot of gay and lesbian and bisexual friends in a number of fraternities and sororities, and their fraternity and sorority experience is just as amazing as straight students. So I definitely say, regardless of your background or your identity, there's definitely a fraternity for you and a sorority for you in the Greek community here at Cornell.
I would also agree with Blake and Natasha about it. You don't have to, if you do identify with the community, don't feel pressured to out yourself or have to tell the brothers or sisters about how you identify. If you want to keep that completely to yourself, that's totally fine. We don't judge you based on what your sexual preference is, but just know that there is a community for you, and that if you do say you might encounter a brother or sister who does identify with the LGBT community, who may not be, I guess you won't immediately identify that he or she does. So that's important if you would want to say to the brothers or sisters that you do identify with that community. And yeah, I agree with Blake and Natasha, completely open to that.
Thank you for answering that important question. This one, I think we've already addressed. It's what will meal plans cost? And so I would encourage you to look at our website, but to remember the caveat I shared about IFC fraternities and that first semester Cornell dining plan change. The next question, what is the university doing to prevent hazing? So this is a question that we get every year, and I'm proud to answer this question because I think at Cornell University we're doing a lot to help address and identify and eradicate hazing. We do a variety of things. We have an anti-hazing statement that chapters need to read and sign, that people need to read and sign when they sign their bid. We have an educational program that's required of all of our new members every year that's called the Delta Series, and we always address hazing during that programming. Nationally, we are well known for being one of the first campuses to develop a website. Our website is called hazing.cornell.edu. If you go there, you can find a list of any fraternities or sororities that have gone through the judicial process and been found responsible for hazing. So I encourage you to look at that. There is also a link that anyone with access to that website can either confidentially or anonymously report hazing. If you see something, say something. If something doesn't seem to be going right, we want to know. We want to address it right away. We are serious about wanting to eradicate it. We partner nationally with a hazing collaborative. We've been part of the University of Maine's research about hazing. We have a really well-known scholar named Dr. Tim Marshall who works in what was formerly called Gannett and now is Cornell Health, who really helps us. Travis Apgar, who just recently left the university, was also really well-known in the field of hazing prevention and helped us do a lot of work. And a few years ago, one thing that we did to change the culture of the new member process, we now have a 4-week maximum. So the new member process can be no longer than 4 weeks. Often it used to be called pledging, and we have eradicated that word, and we now call it a new member orientation process. We have all of the fraternities and sororities for every council turn in their plans, and someone in our office reviews them and gives them feedback. Their national organization also reviews the plans as well as their alumni. And I would also share with you that we have a strong national organization presence, and many of our national partners have a model that the chapters here can use that is the right way that a new member orientation or education process should be done. But I would encourage you, if you are a student or if you are a parent or a family member, that if something concerns you, let us know. We want to know and we want to be a solution. Additionally, I would mention this question I think goes along. It's what is the initiation deadline? And the initiation deadline is the end of February. It's the last Sunday in February, and that is the culmination of the 4-week process. I will say that that is based largely on the IFC and Panhellenic bid day. So there might be MGLC chapters that start their process later and as a result end later. So it might be after that February deadline, but it still cannot be more than a maximum of 4 weeks. Do any of the students have anything they'd like to share about our hazing prevention efforts?
Like,
I would say anti-hazing, our new member education program is just a really fun, exciting 4-week opportunity. So when I went through it, I had the opportunity to get my older brother, who was a junior in my fraternity at the time, and it was really cool just to learn more about his background, to receive academic support from him, all while learning about the fraternity and the older brothers and the history and the founders of my fraternity. So I'd say more importantly than the things we're doing to prevent hazing is the things we're doing to promote a really safe and meaningful new member education experience.
Thank you, Blake. An additional question, are there more international students in any specific fraternities? Blake's raising his hand.
So there over 36 chapters, which I find really exciting. So I've met students in my individual fraternity from countries around the world, and many other fraternities have many other countries represented. I would say there's a few that have the most international students. One that comes to mind is Beta Theta Pi. They have a large international student contingency, so that'd be one to check out. But I don't know of a single fraternity. Maybe there's like 1 or 2 that don't have any international students. There are a ton of international students in almost all of our fraternities.
Thank you, Blake. I know that we pulled some numbers of data this past year, and we were impressed to see how many international students were throughout our fraternity and sorority community. And so I think there's definitely a place for you if you're an international student. And I know the councils have been trying to do more outreach with student organizations that are particularly for international students, just to let them know about the experience, because we know your planning process might be different. You know, if you're planning to come back early for IFC or Panhellenic recruitment, we want to make sure you have the information. So we'd encourage you to participate. This question is, can you join both an athletic team and a fraternity given schedules? And I'm going to open that up more broadly because I know we have athletes throughout our 3 councils. So Eddie, do you want to answer first?
Sure. Yes, it's really possible to be an athlete and also join one of our fraternity or sorority. I know coaches sometimes want to know ahead of time if you're joining Greek life in general, but just communicate that with the organizations you want to join, and also communicate that with your coach. Athlete tend to join MGLC later in their college career. So once they're a junior or senior within MGLC, they decide to join a fraternity or sorority.
I know there are conflicts sometimes with the actual days of recruitment if someone's an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things to keep in mind is that if you've got any sort of conflict for a round of Panhellenic recruitment, there is a form to fill out. It's on the Panhell website, so it's pretty easy. All you do is you write down, you know, the days and the rounds that you'll be missing and why. So athletics are pretty much always excused. It is up to the chapter's discretion whether or not they want to invite you back after, you know, not having interacted with you, but most of them do. And generally we are very, very understanding of athletics and the rigorous time that takes. So a lot of chapters have different regulations for their athletes as well. So there might be some sort of required events that you have to go to for your sorority within Panhellenic. And they'll typically waive a lot of those for athletes because they know that their schedules are kind of crazy and there's not really a possible way of making both of those events. So the short answer is yes, of course, we try to always be inclusive. And if there's anything that you feel like we could be doing better, just let your Rho Gamma know or let one of us know and we'll communicate and do our best to fix it.
Thank you. Blake, do you have anything to add or covered? What do you think?
That. So for fraternities, like Natasha said, if you're going to miss any of recruitment, that's totally feasible. You can communicate it with Sam Tur, who's the VP recruitment at recruitment@cornellifc.org, if you would like to. But for the most part, if you miss any of the days of IFC recruitment, you're going to be totally fine. But for the most part, I think it's definitely a hard balance to balance being in a fraternity and being a full-time student and an athlete. But I've seen a number of students do it, and I've seen them really enjoy being a part of both the sport camaraderie and the fraternity brotherhood.
All for your answers. I would mention for those of you who are athletes that the culture of each team does tend to be different and led by the coach. So that is a conversation that you might want to have with your coach to find out if there are others in fraternities and sororities and what their opinion is about making this membership decision. This one is going to be specific to Panhellenic, but it says, are letters of recommendation required or recommended for Panhellenic recruitment?
Yeah, honestly, that's a no to both. They're definitely not required, and they're actually not even recommended. Our chapters typically have too many women going through Panhellenic recruitment for them to have time to go through recommendation letters at all. So definitely don't worry about it. I don't know of really anybody that's had recommendation letters.
Thank you, Natasha. I think that's a really common question because I recognize that at some campuses, they're very important. You can certainly send them if you have them, but like Natasha said, they're not given the most serious consideration like they might be at some other campuses. So don't stress yourself out over getting a recommendation from people, you know, from all 13 of our sororities or anything like that. This question, we talked about an 80% acceptance rate for the Panhellenic recruitment process. And this says, does the 80% acceptance rate also apply to fraternities? Blake, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I believe last year. Everything depends on how many people register for recruitment and how many new members that fraternities want to take. But it's usually around 80%. And for the most part, like Natasha said, it's usually not because the student doesn't receive a bid from any fraternity. It's usually because he goes through the process, he or she, and ultimately decides that joining a fraternity isn't the best decision for them. So it's usually that rather than just getting cut from all your fraternities of interest.
I would express to you that this is why we continue to say, you know, to keep options open. And sometimes if you only visit one fraternity the whole week and then that fraternity doesn't give you a bid, you might wish that you had spent some more time with other groups. So I encourage you to visit definitely more than one. Eddie, do you have any advice from the MGLC perspective in terms of being asked to join or not and what that might look like?
Yeah, my advice is to definitely go to multiple information sessions. I know that you might, or that your friends might just be open-minded and attend multiple information sessions and see what each fraternity and sorority is like, and then take some time to reflect on whether that chapter is the chapter you want to join, and also think about how would you fit and how would you contribute to the chapter. MGLC chapters tend to be smaller, so you want to take into consideration like what position you may hold, because most likely you will hold a position, and also like what it will be like to be in that chapter in general, and on a national level, like is that the perfect fit for you?
Thank you. This is a question that says, will membership in a fraternity or sorority affect a student's ability to succeed academically? I will let you, as students yourselves, give some answers. Why don't we start with Blake?
So I would that being a member of the fraternity absolutely supports and supplements being a full-time student. When I came to Cornell, like both my parents were in fraternities and sororities at other universities. And I knew that Cornell was such an academically rigorous climate that I was actually turned off from joining a fraternity at first, just because I wanted to focus so intently on my academics, get a good GPA, get a good job, et cetera, et cetera. But throughout my first semester, the most engaged students and the most engaged academics and scholars I noticed were all members of fraternities and sororities. So I think that it makes sense that the average GPA of a fraternity member is higher than the average GPA of a non-fraternity member at Cornell. A few of the academic resources that you'll obtain once you join a fraternity. In most fraternities, there's academic bigs or mentors. So not only will you have your big in your fraternity, but you'll also have someone in your major or in your undergraduate college that'll be able to give you academic support or mentorship or advice about what classes to take, what professors are great to enroll in, different advice on assignments and projects and prelims. So from my perspective and from the experience of all my friends in a variety of fraternities, being a member of a fraternity has only advanced their academic pursuits at Cornell.
Thank you, Blake. Eddie, I think of you because I know in the hotel school you spend a lot of time in labs and things. Would you like to comment on the academic portion?
Sure. I know for my fraternity personally, we have academic who oversees your grade through your education process. But also when you are a member of the fraternity, we take into consideration like your workload. I know the pre-meds in my chapter tend to not be the presidents and the vice presidents because it's a lot of work, but also we take into consideration how much time you need outside of chapter meetings to complete your work. So that's understandable, but just know that taking leadership role is you gain transferable skills in the workplace. I know as president and vice president of my chapter and then president of the council, I've definitely learned a lot of skills that I may use potentially in my full-time employment after Cornell. But academics are a priority at Cornell. Obviously, it's a institution where everyone wants to succeed and really competitive, but just express how you feel about your workload and what accommodations your chapter can do so that you can both be active in Greek life and also succeed academically.
Thank you, Eddie. And last but not least, I think our engineer, Natasha, might have something to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with what both Eddie and Blake said. We actually typically find that within Panhellenic chapters, your GPA goes up after you join a sorority. And again, that's because you've got so many good mentors around you, as well as, you know, carpools to the library and people that you can study with, and you're meeting people within your major, within your school, all that kind of stuff. And like Eddie touched on, there's so many leadership opportunities within all three of our councils that when I go to job interviews now and they ask for any situation, it's typically something related to Greek life and, you know, some sort of situation that's come up with pretty much anything that we've handled either within our chapter, within Panhellenic. And so again, it gives you those really transferable skills that not only is your GPA good after that, but then you're kind of even above that because you've got, you know, these soft skills that are so important.
Commitment to join a fraternity or sorority, particularly if you become a leader in the community or in your chapter, but many of our students manage it really well, including these three right here. Here's another question. Do the fraternities have enough room for all members to live in their houses? And I will extend that also to the sororities if Natasha's back with us. But first I'll have Blake respond.
Yes, so in a majority of fraternities, you'll have the opportunity to live in the chapter house your sophomore and junior year. With that being said, it's not mandatory to live in, so you can become a member of a fraternity and be an active member, but choose to not live in the fraternity. I've never heard of a student wanting to live in a fraternity and being turned away because of capacity issues. So more often than not, you'll have the opportunity to live in for at least 2 years, and you'll always have either a single or a double in your fraternity.
Thank you, Blake. Natasha, are you back with us? Okay, great.
We lost Natasha's audio.
Okay, I think we lost your audio. What I would say though for the Panhellenic sororities is that a new member class each year might be from 40 to 50. And so some of the houses don't actually have space for every new member plus chapter officers that might live in the house. So there are some situations where not everyone in the new member class lives in. Sometimes the person doesn't want to. They might be an RA or they might have already signed a lease off campus to live with other people. So we encourage the sororities in Panhellenic to do their own house lottery before the campus housing lottery, so students would be aware if they needed to seek alternate housing. There are also, in situations of the house being filled and more people wanting to live in, sometimes sororities will rent like an apartment across the street or something to allow those women the experience to live together. And Eddie, I know that you live with some fraternity brothers, if you want to talk about, you know, in MGLC, one organization has a house, but what sort of community is built amongst fraternities and sororities in MGLC, even without houses?
Yeah, so for the rest of our council, the chapters that do not have houses, we tend to live together in College Town or on North Campus. So you move in with your brothers or sisters, and typically that house stays within the chapter. So next year, the new members may renew the lease and sort of live on that off-house campus housing. This year, like my fraternity, we live closer to College Town, and we just all live there. We're in the same fraternity. So it's not a fraternity house, it's not an annex, but it's a place where we all live together.
Thank you. This question says, during the beginning of recruitment, is it inconsiderate to excuse yourself to say you'd like to visit another chapter? And how should a new member go about this? I will tell you, for Panhellenic, you actually don't have that option. Because your schedule is printed for you, you must follow the schedule exactly. If you deviate from that schedule, you will be withdrawn from the process. The exception is what we talked about earlier with if there are excuses, you know, if you're an athlete or if something comes up that you're excused for a portion of the day. But you go and you visit every group that you're invited to, and you need to do that to continue along in the process. But for IFC, I'll let Blake answer that question.
Yes, so IFC fraternities are very aware of the fact that they're only one fraternity within a community of 36 fraternities. And they know that potentially members during recruitment week really want to get the full picture of the fraternity experience at Cornell. And with that means attending more than one chapter. So they'll be totally understanding if you come by during an open house for only 15 or 30 minutes and stop by another chapter, or if you have to turn down an invitation to an invite-only event. It's totally normal to say, look, I've really enjoyed meeting members of your chapter, and I have potential interest in joining. However, I do want to keep my options open, so I'm going to check out X chapter as well. So it's totally normal to juggle a bunch of fraternities. That's what makes recruitment so fun, but that's what also can make it a bit stressful and overwhelming at times.
Thank you, Blake. And I encourage you, if you have a question that hasn't been answered, to make sure you enter it now. Here's an additional question. It says the recruitment handbook states the process is dry, no alcohol. Is this really true? Do past recruitments bear this out? So the rule is that you're not supposed to have alcohol during recruitment. That's a rule for Cornell University, for the 3 councils, for the national organizations. There's also the question of if the potential new members are 21, which is the legal drinking age. I will say that for IFC recruitment, there's a survey that's given every year that students answer. And we've asked about social experiences in this survey. They take it when they sign a bid. And we have seen the numbers dwindle dramatically. The rules have gotten stricter as we've gone on through the years here. And the rule was not always that there was absolutely no alcohol allowed, and that is now the rule. There are a few chapters last year that did experience judicial consequences as a result of having alcohol during recruitment. The IFC leaders really do a lot of good work, as does our office, in training and educating the students and in kind of patrolling and monitoring and keeping an eye on things. But there are a few chapters last year that did face judicial consequences for violating the rule. Sometimes if they violate the rule, and they can lose the next day of recruitment. And if that happens, we make sure every potential new member is aware of that. I would say for Panhellenic recruitment during the rounds, there is no alcohol, and similar for MGLC. But if any of the students want to comment, Natasha's shaking her head. Are you back? Can we try you again? You're back. Oh, we can't hear you. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what's, there's something going on with Google Hangouts.
Can we hear Blake or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we're doing our best to make sure that fraternities do not have alcohol in the process whatsoever. But as a potential new member, something I think you should keep in mind is this is a lifelong decision you're making to join a fraternity. You're not only a member of that fraternity for your 4 years at Cornell, but really for the rest of your life. And you definitely want to be able to make a very strong, coherent decision. And the best way to do that is to stay away from alcohol. I think some of the fraternities that have formed the best member classes, that are the most cohesive and successful, as well as the potential new members that have made the strongest, most fulfilling and meaningful decisions, have been the ones that have successfully stayed away from alcohol. So even if alcohol is in your presence, I strongly recommend you not only to follow the law, but to also use your best judgment so that you have the most successful, fun, and safe recruitment week.
No, he didn't hear you.
Oh, you didn't hear me, maybe? Can you hear me, Eddie?
I can hear you now.
Okay, so this is like a commercial. I was just saying, did you want to comment about the role of alcohol in MGLC recruitment? I know it's a little different other than for Asian interests where it's not everybody at once, but it's a little more individualized. But did you want to comment?
Sure. So the 4-week process for mostly historically Black and Latino-based fraternity and sororities is different because everyone starts at a different time frame, and so they end and start differently and at different times. So it gets a little complicated, but same for IFC and Panhellenic, this is a dry period, no alcohol, whether you're 21 or not, no one can have alcohol.
Thank you, Eddie. That's a good point. I don't think I mentioned that when I talked about the new member orientation process, but that is an alcohol-free process for all 3 of our councils, that 4-week period. Natasha, did you have anything? I think you're with us now. I think your audio works.
I think I am. And yeah, Panhellenic doesn't have any sort of alcohol during any of our rounds or anything like that. You will also typically find that your students are very tired afterwards and generally just want to take a nap.
Thank you, Natasha. It is a long day because of the schedule and because we're trying to get you to all the sororities at the beginning for Panhellenic. So she's not wrong. You might want to rest your voice and stay in with your friends at night. This is very specific. It's how do I update my registration status for IFC? You can always email Sam Turer, who is the Vice President of IFC Recruitment. Sometimes if your student center address has not been updated, what happens when you register is it loads what might be an old address. Let us know if that's the case. We have to put in an IT ticket to reset it, but that will be important because fraternities will visit you where you live and you want that to be the right place. I would additionally say, in addition to registering with us, when you go into visit chapters, they will have you sign in, and so you'll have the opportunity to write your address there. So if it's wrong on our list, we want to update that, but you'll also have the kind of one-on-one opportunity at different fraternities to give them the correct contact information. Blake, anything I missed there?
Yeah, Sam Turer's email, just Kara mentioned, is recruitment@cornellifc.org. He's very good at checking his email and responding promptly.
He is. And again, I encourage you that our website is greeks.cornell.edu, and you can link from there to individual council websites. You can link to individual chapters. Many of our fraternities and sororities are active on social media, so you can see what they've been up to, and you can answer most of your questions that way. Sam or Blake would be happy to help you for IFC. Eddie would be happy to help you for MGLC. For Panhellenic, you have that extra bonus edition of a Rogama or a recruitment guide who can answer any of your questions. They should have already emailed you. They are individual students, so while they started emailing on January 1st, if your email came a little later, it's just due to their schedule as a student, so nothing to worry about. As we wrap up, because I think our questions are starting to dwindle, I'm wondering if the students would like to share just kind of any reflections now that you're all seniors and you're thinking about your last time through the process. If you'd just like to share how fraternity and sorority has been meaningful to you and anything you kind of wished you would have known at this point in the process. We will start with, now they're all thinking, and who do I pick first? How about Natasha?
Yeah, so I guess the thing that I wish I had known during the process was that you're going to find a home no matter what. And, you might hear stereotypes about houses. None of them are true. So just, do whatever feels right to you and go with your gut, really, because you're going to end up meeting a great group of individuals. One of my favorite things about being part of a chapter on campus is that literally no matter where I go on campus, there is another woman in my sorority somewhere near me. And honestly, like after joining a house, I never felt safer. Just having that secondary, like someone can always look out for me if I need help, someone's always there. That's been really, really nice for me and has made me feel a lot better.
Thank you, Natasha. Next, we'll have Eddie.
Sure. I would say to definitely leverage your network within other Greeks at Cornell, because I noticed that when you are an alum, that's when you tend to like connect